What's up, everybody? A very welcome along to tonight's late night agenda. And my goodness, does the transfer world move quickly, ladies and gents. I've got so much stuff to get through tonight that I'm probably going to forget half of it and have to do the rest of it tomorrow. But look, I'll get through as many of your questions, as many of the topics that you guys have and you want to talk about. Thank you very much for joining me. Apologies, I'm a couple of minutes late, but I think you forgive me because I was recording the intro to our 100k giveaway video that's going to be dropping tomorrow evening. So make sure you keep an eye out for the end of season review / 100k giveaway video. And by 100k, don't get excited, we're not giving away 100k, but because of course we hit 100,000 subscribers, we promise you a giveaway. That video is going to drop tomorrow evening, so make sure you've got your notifications turned on. Right, how are we? What do we want to go with tonight first of all? Right, the first one I see in the chat, and I'm going to try and go through these with you in mind, guys, so I'll go with your comments. So the first one is Kane, which is of course the winger from Lille, who I was actually talking in our Discord group earlier on with Stephen Booker about, and I don't know too much about Kane, to be honest with you. Look, Lille have had a fantastic season in France. We know we've been linked to Renato Sanchez. There's been a few other bits around Jonathan David as well, but I have to say I think we can do better, even though I haven't seen too much of the dude. I feel like I should have seen a lot more of him if he was as good as is rumoured to be. Now, I know some people want us to beef up the squad a little bit, but I've got to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, I want Liverpool to be going out there and signing players that are going to come in and want to be starting week in and week out and not beefing up the squad. So, although 25 million quid seems a realistic enough fee for a winger, I don't know too much about him, and I'm going to claim ignorance on this and say that I'd rather a more marquee type sexy signing, and I'll get on to that a little bit later on in the video, by the way, because I do have some interesting enough news that viewers of the United Stand might have heard earlier on, but Mark was kind enough to message me and let me know about it as well. So look, I'll get through that, and it kind of leads around the whole Mohamed Salah thing that you've seen in the title tonight. Look at Sadio Mane's Instagram story. Would it not be easier, mate? And again, I'm not having a go here, buddy, but would it not be easier just to let me know what the fuck he said on Instagram rather than having me going digging through it and trying to figure it out? You've put the time to make a comment. Just tell me what he said and then we can discuss it. Right, what else have we got? I hope Salah stays. I'm going to wait a minute or two before I get on to the Salah stuff because I know that the chat's going to fill up as we go on a few minutes, and that you're going to want me to go back over stuff. And look, I've got no problem doing that. Of course, you guys are here to share information, get information, and have a chat, but it kind of annoys people if I go back over stuff over and over again. I hope you get where I'm coming from. Apart from Sancho and Mbappe, who would you want? Said my nan's got bunions. Thank you for the super chat, mate. First one of the night. Look, I've made no secret of the fact that I love the idea of Canade. I've been saying it for a while. It makes perfect sense to me. Apart from Mbappe and Sancho, you're not really leaving me a lot to work with in the wide areas, are you? Now, I wouldn't mind Houssem as an attacking midfielder. I wouldn't mind the likes of Rafinha. I wouldn't mind Pedro Neto. And there's probably 5 or 6 other players I can name that I wouldn't mind as well. But realistically, I'd rather name the positions I think I'd like to see us strengthen rather than individual players, because I don't know what budget we're working with, and I'm sure that you guys don't know as well, and I'm sure that you're as interested and as intrigued as I am to find out. So I would say we need at least 1 centre back, maybe 2 depending on outgoings. I would say we need at least 1 central midfielder, possibly 2 depending on how we're going to set up attack wise, if we're going to bring in a 10 or not. And I'd also like to bring in a striker or a wide forward. Actually, look, I'd like both if we can move on some of the fringe players, which of course I'll get to as well. There's so much stuff. I mean, the world really has moved quickly over the past 48 hours. I didn't get a chance to do a live stream yesterday because I was covering the Europa League final, but in that 48 hours, my god, let's have a quick recap of what's after happening in the world of football. Allegri looks like he's about to be unveiled as the new Juventus manager, having left them in 2019. Zinedine Zidane's return to Real Madrid has ended in a bit of a catastrophe as he walks out on that job and leaves the Real Madrid hot seat open. Mauricio Pochettino could well be on his way back to Spurs. Daniel Levy looks like he's going on his knees grovelling to bring Pochettino back. But interestingly enough on that one, it seems that PSG are quite happy to keep Pochettino on as things stand. So there's a bit of a merry-go-round going on in the managerial world, and that's before we start looking at the likes of the Wolves manager job and a few others as well. But it moves quick, this transfer stuff, folks. It really does. What about Aouar? I've not seen too much to say that we are in for Houssem Aouar. Doesn't mean we aren't, just means I haven't seen it. But this is going to be the summer he moves. I really feel this will be the summer Houssama moves. Where he goes remains open to argument, I suppose. We know Arsenal were in from last year. Will they return? I don't know. The interesting part for us is, if we were to bring in Houssama, it would be a change in direction from Jurgen Klopp, wouldn't it? Because we don't and haven't played with a number 10 really since Felipe Coutinho left. And it's important to remember as well that Klopp inherited Felipe Coutinho when he came to the club. He wasn't somebody that Klopp went out and got. Now look, he was a cracking player when he was here, don't get me wrong. But it would be a bit of a change in direction from the manager if he was to go and bring in a number 10. Some of us might say, and I would include myself in this, that change in direction isn't a bad thing. I would like to see a number 10 brought in. Who that is, I don't know. Although a lot of people would love the likes of Jack Grealish. Now, I would say Aston Villa are going to ask a phenomenal amount of money for Grealish because he's a phenomenal talent, and you pay the English tax, as you know, for a Premier League proven player who is of English nationality, or at least now chose to play for England. And I don't think Liverpool will be the club that pays that money. I really don't. And it's not to say I don't think he's good enough, but you know, nothing in our ownership history makes me think that suddenly we're going to veer off the path that we have before to go and sign Jack Grealish for what would be an astronomical amount of money. Gerrard to Wolves, said Jayden Landry. I don't know, but from what I've been led to believe, and actually, you know, weirdly, normally I'd say I've got no information around Steven Gerrard, but I actually kind of do a little bit. Stuff that I can't say too much on, but it will become a bit clearer over time. And the reports are pretty much that his job and his plan is to return to Rangers for the upcoming season, and unless something very dramatic happens, I expect that to be the case. Robin Hamilton said, hey Craig, no comment really, just buy yourself a point on me and keep up the great work. That is so nice of you, dude. Thank you. That's really, really kind, Robin, and thank you. Really appreciate that. You're very kind indeed. Any news on BISSOUMA? Yes, there's lots of news on BISSOUMA. So, as has been reported in the Echo via, I think, Anfield Central, if my memory is right, it looks as though Liverpool's representatives are going to sit down and talk with Yves Bissouma's representatives on Friday. Now, I have to say, I can absolutely not stand over this. I'm just reporting something that's put out there in the Echo via Anfield Central. I don't know if they are true, if they're not true. I do know we're interested in Bissouma. I do know that he's somebody that we've been looking at as a potential replacement for Virginio Wijnaldum. And look, I'm all in on Bissouma. I think it's a great move, and at around 30 to 40 million pound, I think it's a reasonable outlay as well for somebody who not only has come in and played really well in that Brighton team under Potter, but somebody who looks the business to me, somebody who looks tidy, somebody who I think could do a similar job to Gini. So look, I'm not saying he's at Gini's level, or he'll be as fit as Gini, or he'll be as useful in the squad as Gini was with regard to the amount of positions that he can play, but I love the idea of it, and I like the link. It's one that I'd be quite happy with. What else have we got? Why not buy a striker and use Bobby as a 10? Could happen, Graham. The only thing I'd say is Daniel Malin is pretty much the only link I've seen to Liverpool for a striker. Now, there's been some loose stuff around Jonathan David, the other guy from Lille who was up front for them with Yilmaz. I don't think he's good enough, to be honest with you, but that's just my opinion. Patson Daka is a name that I think a lot of us would be very happy if we were to make that move. But I stress, like I said last week, I think Jesse Marsch is going to try and talk him to moving up to Leipzig with him from Salzburg, because he's taken over from Julian Nagelsmann. But I've not seen much, mate. Now, I know some Liverpool fans would love to see Haaland, would love to see Harry Kane. I think you'll agree with me that the odds of us going out and spending the money on either of those are very unlikely. But yeah, that's where we're at on the striker front. I've really not got much news around forwards. There are a few other positions I've got a few bits and pieces on, and on any chance of Mbappe. Look, we can all dream, but I'm not in any way confident that we're going to sign Mbappe. I can make a case for it. I can pitch it to why I think we can afford it in some way, in shape or form. But at the end of the day, you know, no suggestions from the media, no suggestions from any journalist I've spoken to that Liverpool have a firm plan in place to make a move for Kylian Mbappe. And look, I wish I could tell you otherwise. In fact, I'm holding out for, I don't know, some beaming ray of light that just lets us know that maybe it's possible. But unfortunately, as things stand, it looks like no. But then again, you know, none of us had a Scooby-Doo about certain transfers like Fabinho and Diogo Jota, and, you know, whilst they aren't Kylian Mbappe, they were certainly transfers that came out of the blue. So, yeah. Sorry, I wish I could say yes, mate. I really do, because I love him as much as you would, I promise you. News on Nat Phillips. I'm getting some varied stuff around Nat Phillips. So there are some people that believe that Liverpool are willing to listen to offers for Nat Phillips and are going to keep Ben Davies. And there are other people who believe vice versa, that we're going to keep Nat Phillips and that we'll listen to offers for Ben Davies. The honest answer is I don't know. I do know about the Canade stuff. I told you a couple of weeks ago. That should be done and dusted over the next 48, 72 hours. Also, I disagree on the Kabak stuff. Not I disagree that the story isn't correct, because I do believe Liverpool aren't going to take up the option of signing Ozan Kabak for 18 million quid. I would though. 21 years of age, Turkish international. I know he hasn't had a chance to show his best side, and I know people are going to say that he's been inconsistent at Liverpool, but he has something about him, and he is still only 21, as is Canade, but we're going to be paying, roughly 150% more for Canade. Look, I want Canade as well, don't get me wrong, I'm being very greedy here, ladies and gents. I want both of them, but it does look as if, from what I've been told and from what I'm reading, and again, I'm open to any other stories that are out there, that it's going to be Canade and what we have at the club, and we move one of Davies or Phillips on, by the looks of it. Any news on Jonathan Ikone? I touched on it at the start, mate. Just basically what other people have read. That there's, I think it's Inside Football or Team Talk, one of them, are saying 25 million is the amount that would it take to get him, and that we're in for him. I don't know. I've not had it confirmed by anybody whatsoever, but that doesn't mean it isn't true. It just means I haven't heard about it. Right, so the big news of the day is, of course, about... I got a message. I woke up I'll be honest, I always tell you guys the absolute truth, and I checked with Mark to make sure I could say this, by the way. So I woke up today with a message from Mark Goldbridge on my phone, just giving me a bit of a heads up to say that he had Christian Falk of Build over on the United stand for a chat around transfers. Great news. But he was a little bit surprised, as I was, to hear that Christian Falk mentioned a couple of times about interest in Mohamed Salah from Chelsea, and that Liverpool hold interest in Jadon Sancho. Now, the latter part of that, the fact that we hold interest in Jadon Sancho, isn't really a surprise to any of us. We know that's the case. We've known that's the case for a while, and we know that there are many English clubs that are going to be interested in Jadon Sancho. Now, from Borussia Dortmund's side, they're going to want a figure close to around 80 to 82 million pound all in, guaranteed, for Jadon Sancho. So the key word there is guaranteed, by the way, not if we win X, if we win Y. They're going to want about 80 million quid guaranteed. But the part of it that really shocks me, and I'm sure really shocks you and annoys you guys, is the thoughts that our owners, after everything that they've done around the Super League and the mistakes that they've made, would somehow entertain selling Mohamed Salah to a Premier League rival. Now, that's before we even get into how is Salah benefiting from this. He's already been at Chelsea. It didn't work out for him. I'm not saying he holds any ill feelings towards Chelsea whatsoever. But what would be the appeal of leaving Liverpool to go to Chelsea? I don't see it. I'm baffled by it. Mark was baffled by it. But it's not the first time I've heard it. I think a few weeks ago, you might remember, we spoke about it on the channel, that there had been a story put out. It may actually have been Christian Falk from Bill that put the story out originally. But it was something that I think I laughed off because I just couldn't make any sense of it. Can you imagine the backlash at John W. Henry and FSG if after the whole fiasco in the Super League, Mohamed Salah plays a big part in our push for the Champions League places, scored some important goals, showed all the emotion that he did in those last few games, particularly against United when he scored that goal, and then we go and sell him? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Now, I think maybe originally I kind of put it that, okay, maybe this is Mohamed Salah's representatives putting a little bit of pressure on Liverpool to try and say, give Mo a new contract, which we should be doing. We should be breaking our wage structure. We should be giving Mohamed Salah an increased deal. And I don't know how we will replace his goals if he moves on. I'm shocked. I'm baffled. And I hope to God it's not true. Now, I'm not calling anybody a liar here because, of course, Christian Falk has far more contacts in the football world than I do. Far more. But I just don't see how it all ties together. I just don't see what the rhyme or reason of it is. And I'm sure that you're probably thinking similarly. Chelsea need a striker. That's fair enough. But so do we. And I've long told you guys, I love the idea of Mohamed Salah being moved centrally and played as a striker, and us going out there and bringing in another wide forward. I think Mo could do that, no problem to him. And sometimes as players get a bit older, we've seen they reinvent themselves, and that's kind of what I was expecting to happen. I was more of the belief we'll get a wide forward in than we'd go and bring in a centre forward, because I thought maybe we will move Mo through the centre. But I have to say, I was as shocked as Mark when he sent me that voice note earlier on to let me know about it. And thank you to him, by the way, for letting me know. It's I don't get it. Look, the Sancho stuff, yes, of course I get that. That makes sense. Why wouldn't we be interested in a wide forward who was at Manchester City, went to the Bundesliga with Dortmund, proved himself there, became an England international, and is available this summer? That makes sense. It makes sense because that's a position we need to strengthen. But what doesn't make sense to me also is the number. So, okay, you can kind of bring yourself to believe that if you moved Salah on, you brought in a youngster, not only will we probably get more for Salah than we pay for Sancho, but you're refreshing the squad's age bracket. But I think there's better ways that we could do that. An example, of course, while it's not for the same amount of money, is the news today that a couple of clubs are in for Shaqiri. So I think Sevilla are offering around 14 million from what somebody said to me earlier on. We know that Fenerbahce are back in interested in Shaqiri as they were last summer. Liverpool have told them there's no hope of a loan. They want a permanent deal for Shaqiri. And I think again around £12 million to £14 million is probably the price point that would get Shaqiri get the interest of Liverpool for selling Shaqiri, which is roughly what we paid for him. So I think that's fair enough, to be honest with you. And then Origi as well, you've seen links with him. He was left out of the Belgium squad for the Euros. So what's going to happen with Divock? It doesn't look like he has much of a future at Liverpool, so he's potentially going to be available to move on as well. That all makes sense to me. That frees up money, frees up wages, frees up squad places. That maybe let you go and bring in somebody like a Sancho, a Neto or a Rafinha. But I don't get the Salah stuff. I'm going to dig into it as much as I can, get you guys as much information as I can over the coming days on it, because I think there'd be a meltdown, and rightly so, in the fan base if we sold our top goal scorer for the past few seasons, somebody who's come in and smashed records at Liverpool, somebody who clearly enjoys being here. You can see what it meant to him when Alisson scored, when he scored against United. And I'm flabbergasted. I don't know what else to say. I am absolutely shocked by it, and I hope it's absolute nonsense. Another super chat I have to get through. Dazzling Daniel said, "Hi Craig, hope you're well. Keep up the good content. You're doing well." Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate it. Very generous of you. And thank you for being here, dude. And thank you for commenting as well. What else we got? Thoughts on Mane? Look, I'm a greedy bastard. I'm not going to lie to you. I want us to keep all of our good players, and I want us to add to that. So I want Bobby to be here next season, Mane to be here, Salah to be here, Jota to be here, and I want somebody else. So I want a Jadon Sancho, Rafinha or a Neto or somebody like that. And move on the fringe players, because if there's one thing we've learned from this season, with a couple of little injuries and stuff, our bench looks weak very, very quickly. So there's also a few stories that suggest Jurgen Klopp's planning a bit of a clear out of between 5 to 8 players. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but again, you've got to find buying clubs for these players as well. Lukaku to Chelsea or Lautaro Martinez, Inter needs a cut in wages to survive. That's absolutely true, Derek. So Antonio Conte has left Inter Milan, and the reason that he's leaving Inter Milan is because of a dispute about the amount of money that they have to free up, because they are in a bit of a financial mess at the minute. And you're right, they do need to free up somewhere between 70 and 90 million euro, and the obvious way of doing that is by selling one of their star players. And obviously Antonio Conte wanted to build on the success that he's had there at Inter Milan and winning Serie A, and rightly so. But you know, you're right. I think more likely is one of those options that you've pointed out there, Derek, maybe going to Chelsea. Why do they want Mohamed Salah? Because he's a class player, mate. It's fairly straightforward. Right? Any club would want Mohamed Salah because he's a damn fine footballer. What have we got? Let's sign 2 more Jotas. Yes, please. If we can find them, absolutely. There'll be a riot if they sell Nat. Nah, there won't. Look, let's be honest. Look, I feel like a real arsehole saying this, but Nat Phillips done really well. Nat Phillips played a massive part in us getting Champions League football, but I still stand over the fact that I don't think Nat Phillips is good enough. He's improved and may continue improving, but I just don't see that he's good enough. You know, he's got some attributes that are good, and in a club that plays to those attributes and strength, he probably will succeed. But if we continue to play the high line when Van Dijk comes back, I don't see Nat Phillips having the pace to play it. But it does mean I don't love him, and it does mean I don't appreciate what he's done for us this year. Because whatever happens with Nat Phillips, I think his career has moved on to another level now, and rightly so. Because, he was a big part of what we did this season and deserves credit for that. What have we got? We can't let Mo go. I agree. I'll be absolutely furious, mate, if he goes anywhere. But it is important to remember as well around Mo. He's coming into a point now where he's got 2 years left on his Liverpool deal. And the club are at a point where they either have to tie him down to a new deal or look at the possibility of moving him on, because nobody wants him to get into 18 months, 1 year left on his contract, and then we're in a situation like PSG are now with Mbappe, where you could potentially lose the player for a good fraction of what he's worth. So I hope the club tie him down to a new deal. We know that it's been publicly put out there in the media that Liverpool are most likely going to sit down with the likes of Alisson, Fabinho and Van Dijk and give them new deals. What happens with the likes of Adrian remains to be seen as well. His contract's up. Will we promote Queevy and Kelleher? I don't think so. I've been told that Queevy and Kelleher will probably go out on loan. So then you're going to have to dip your toe in the market and get yourself a backup keeper, because Adrian looks more likely to go back to Spain, maybe to Real Betis. Nat Phillips would be Sean Dyche's VVD. I think there's a few clubs in the Premier League, Neil, that defend in a way that Nat Phillips would be very suited to. And yes, Burnley would probably be one of those. And I hope if Nat Phillips does move that he gets a Premier League club, because I think he deserves it. Give Mo the deal now and we won't lose him. Again, Shanzo, I agree. Mo is our highest paid player from what I'm aware of. And he earns around 200 grand a week before bonuses. So in the open market, his value is probably a lot more than that. So I think we should absolutely sit down and give the man what he wants. BISSOUMA, I covered a little bit earlier on. We are interested in him. Now, I won't go as far as the Echo did earlier on in citing, I think it was Anfield Central, that said Liverpool plan to talk with his representatives on Friday. They may have information I don't on that one. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I do know we're interested in BISSOUMA. It does look like 30 to 40 million quid would buy him. Arsenal also interested, but you would have to imagine if we were interested genuinely, we could blow Arsenal out of the water with what we could offer with regards to the footballing project, probably wages, even though Arsenal have paid some ridiculous wages over the years. So yeah, that's my take on that one. I thought Zidane to PSG. Potentially, yes, it could happen, and that could help convince Kylian Mbappe to stay at Paris Saint-Germain. So, Zinedine Zidane's French. It's no secret that Kylian Mbappe idolises Zidane. That was where they start linking him to Real Madrid. But with the potential of Pochettino maybe going back to Spurs, and that's the important part in all of this, because PSG have also put out there that they have no plans to move Pochettino on. Now, this could be just a way of playing mind games and trying to make it a bit interesting for Daniel Levy, but I'm not a believer in going back to clubs. So, we've seen with Zinedine Zidane when he went back to Real Madrid, it was a patch-up job by Madrid just to try and buy some time, and it wasn't really a great success. And it remains to be seen what happens with Allegri at Juventus, although I think he'll probably be more successful than anybody else who go in there to do that job, because he knows the club really well. But Pochettino didn't win anything at Spurs, and at the end was wanted out by a good chunk of Spurs fans who, were celebrating the fact that Mourinho came in. Now, can they move Pochettino back to Spurs and keep Harry Kane? I would doubt it. I think Kane's mind is probably made up, but maybe bringing Pochettino back would help restore some faith in the Spurs fan base that he can start building another good squad with that Harry Kane money. I don't know. What have we got? Well, mate, how are you keeping? I'm good, Connor King. Thank you, mate. I hope you are as well. If Kane is to leave this summer, I would also inquire about Son. So would I, Darkness. I mean, a piece I read today suggested that Son wouldn't be happy if Kane left and may look to engineer a move out himself. Again, that's just media speculation, but I'd have him at Liverpool. I've said that for a couple of years now. I've always thought that Son's attributes play in well to what Jurgen Klopp wants. Now, the only thing maybe against him might be his age with regards to the type of player we typically sign. What do I think of Barella as Gini's replacement? Again, Brooklyn, good show. Very good show. Nicola Barella is a very talented footballer. And, as was pointed out earlier on, mate, Inter Milan do have to free up some money this year. It's most likely that they'll move on Lukaku or Martinez, but maybe a bid for Nicola Barea would tempt them, and he's somebody that I'd have no issues with coming in to replace Gini. I think he's a very, very fine young footballer. Chances of Chelsea getting Mo back are the same as Arsenal winning the league in the next 10 years. 0. Mate, it's not my story. It's Christian Falk's story. All I'm doing is telling you what was said over on the United stand, because Mark had sent me a message about it just to wonder if I'd heard anything around the whole Salah to Chelsea stuff and Liverpool being in for Sancho. And of course, we know Liverpool were interested in Sancho, but the stuff about Salah to Chelsea I always thought was maybe his agent or his representative trying to push Liverpool along into hurrying up the contract offer, but I hope it's not true. Like all of you, I want Mo at the club. I'll be furious if Mohamed Salah leaves. What do I think of Pedro Goncalves I can never pronounce his name. I don't know much about him. I've seen his stats. I know he came into Sporting to replace Bruno Fernandes, who of course went to United. I think he scored 11 goals with his right foot, 8 goals with his left foot this season, and has a good few assists as well. I think 22 years of age, if my memory's right. And there's been a few articles written about him. I'll agree with you on that, but I, from the very few people I speak to, haven't been given any concrete interest in him, and I certainly haven't watched much of him at Sporting Lisbon, who did very well this season to win the Portuguese league. I think it's United and Chelsea fans trying to get under our skin. I don't know, mate. I mean, the only part that I think gives us any pause for concern here is the fact that Mo is going into that last 2 years of his deal, and that is worrying. I won't lie, that is worrying, because I'm yet to hear anything from the club or Salah's end to say that they've started talks over a new deal, which I think we'd have learned from the Raheem Sterling situation and many others over the years, that there's a time and a place to capitalise on the goodwill and the love a player has for a club, and getting the Champions League place like we did with some of those crazy moments at the end of the season seems like a good time now to approach Mo about it. But you balance that against the fact that he's getting a little bit older, that he might be away for the Olympics, that he'd be away for the AFCON, and that he's absolutely after playing a whole lot of football over the past few years, and maybe the club are looking at it differently. I hope they're not. I sincerely hope they're not, because I can't comprehend it. I said it earlier on. The idea of selling him to a rival just seems like utter stupidity to me. Whatever about him, maybe moving on to another club, it would still hurt if he moved to, like, let's say Real Madrid, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, but at least it would be outside the Premier League. I couldn't cope with seeing him in a Chelsea shirt. It would hurt way too much. What do I think Salah's transfer value is? Taking into account what he has left on his contract and where the market is, of course this is a little bit of a guess, I would say north of £120 million. That's to me, that's about the level for Mohamed Salah. You take into account his marketability, you take into account the fact that he carries a continent on his shoulders and is a proud Egyptian, and how loved he is around the world and how marketable he is. I think that's probably the number, but it shouldn't matter to us. We shouldn't even be wondering what the number is. We should be wondering how much he'll be getting a week in his new contract. That's what I'd rather happen. WFM, mate, welcome back to Anfield Agenda FC. Thank you very much. And by the way, for ladies and gentlemen, Anfield Agenda Extra has now been monetized as well, our third channel, which is a clips channel that puts up shorter form content, 1 minute to 3 minute videos usually. There is a link to Anfield Agenda Extra at the top of the live chat there now, if you want to go over and subscribe to that. Maybe you haven't got time to go back over and grab a whole 45 minute stream or whatever, so Connor clips up the biggest moments in the streams and puts them onto Anfield Agenda Extra. Right, what else have we got? Callum reckons 160 to 175 million for Salah. I think in a pre-COVID world, perhaps, but who has the money right now to go out and spend it on a Mohamed Salah or an Mbappe or a Haaland? It's a very small amount of clubs. The usual big hitters, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, they're in a whole world of trouble for different reasons, and I'll get on to talk about the Super League, by the way, in a few minutes. Jonathan says Rafinha would be better than Salah. I'd like to know in what world you came up with that, mate, because Mohamed Salah has consistently scored a shit ton of goals every single season. So Rafinha's a good footballer, no arguments there, but to come out with a blank statement like he's better than Salah, how? How? Honestly, I'd love to know how, because we should be on our knees thanking Mo for what he's done for the club and the way that he's played, not wishing him away for a good player in Rafinha. I don't get it. Depay, most likely Barcelona. Scott, definitely not to Liverpool. I've said this for a few years. I don't want Memphis Depay anywhere near Liverpool. He's got a fucking horrible attitude, and I don't think he's good enough. He's a bit of a flash in the pan for me at times. What else have we got? Craig, name one name will sign an attack. I can't give you one, Chris, because I honestly don't know. What I can say is, the more people I speak to about Jadon Sancho, the more it becomes obvious that we are genuinely interested in Sancho and that he is somebody who is attainable. So that's the only name I can tell you outside of the Netos and the Rafinhas and stuff that I've seen around, and it'd be a great move, wouldn't it, if Liverpool could go out there and get Jadon Sancho. News on Tielemans, right, so there is a lot of stories linking Yuri Tielemans to Liverpool lately. Some of them coming from his home country, some of them coming from other parts of Europe, some of them coming from the UK. What stops me from believing it is basically knowing how Leicester are with their transfers, particularly moving players on. They usually get a very, very good fee for their players, and they don't like to get pushed around in the transfer market, and they're a club that are looking to build and move on. Now, I've got no idea how disappointed Tielemans may or may not be about the fact that for the second season in a row they fell just short of a Champions League place. I'd just be guessing if I was to tell you that, but I would suggest that there's better value to be had than Tielemans. I'm not saying there were better players. I just think for the money he'd cost, I think there are better options out there. But he's a very good footballer, as was shown with his amazing goal as well in the FA Cup final. Jonathan's back in again with his nonsense. I'm not even going to read it out, mate. You can take your £2 and stick it up your hole. I couldn't give a fuck, mate. I'm not reading out your comments. You're not that important to me. £2. What's £2? But I don't even get to £2, by the way, mate. We get about 55 to 60% of your £2. So for what, 120? Nah, not worth it, Jonathan. Right, we move on. We should sign Vardy. Why? I mean, why? Vardy's what, 63 now? Something like that? Great player for Leicester, and what an amazing story, and a good example of why you should never give up and keep plugging away, and came down from Fleetwood all the way back up, and it's a beautiful story, but he's not going to come to Liverpool. Why? Nah. Did I hear about Robertson staying for the rest of his life? Yeah, I did see the post earlier on, or at least quote a tribute to Andy Robertson, where he said that he'd like to stay at Liverpool ideally for the rest of his career, which is music to all of our ears because we all love Andy Robertson. £8 million from Hull. Basically a swap for Kevin Stewart. Just put that through your head for a second. We got that much from Hull for Kevin Stewart and we bought Andy Robertson. Madness. Just madness. Makes me smile every time I think about it. Suarez looks like he's most likely going to stay at Atleti. At least that's the quotes that the man himself has come out with. He's got one more year, I think, on his Atleti contract, and he looks like he wants to be there. He feels loved at Atletico Madrid, and they've just won La Liga, and I think Luis Suarez stays there for next season. Kate, see, people are saying Tielemans plus Kate are a cash swap deal. Normally I'd say that that's pie in the sky stuff, but it is a world where, maybe we'll see this type of post-COVID deal, and Keita has certainly been linked to Leicester City. I've no idea how strong that interest is or how genuine it is, but I've definitely read the articles like you have. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against that type of a swap, I have to say. I think a lot of Liverpool fans would be quite open to that possibility. But I don't know how real it is or how possible it is, but, just as a hypothetical, yeah, I don't see why not. Fabian Ruiz to Liverpool, good idea. Yeah, Fabian Ruiz, this the guy from Napoli, am I right in this? Sorry, there's a lot of names being thrown around the past few days. Not for me. Napoli, another team that bottled it in the Champions League. We're in there right till the last day of the season. We're playing at home to, I think, Verona or somebody, and shit the bed with a 1-1 draw. So, nah, not for me. But again, that's just my opinion. Did I see Alberto Moreno after the final? I did, and I thought it would. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was cringy as fuck. I might be in the minority on this one, but when I think of Alberto Moreno, I think of a brain dead fullback that was absolutely dog shit. I'm sorry, I don't want to rewrite history, but he was fucking awful. And the fact that he's after winning the Europa League with Villarreal and he's licking Liverpool fans' backsides, I think it's pretty cringy, if I'm being honest with you. It wasn't something that appealed to me whatsoever, and I'm not going to gloss back over how terrible he was at Liverpool and how many times he was caught out of position and how frustrated we all were with him. And if I was a Villarreal fan, I wouldn't be too pleased with it either, to be honest with you. They won a trophy for the first time in their history, winning the Europa League. Meant that no longer are they going into the Europa Conference League, but they're now going into the Champions League. And Alberto Moreno's doing that. I didn't get it. Yeah, it was weird to me, but that's just me. What else have we got? He was the scapegoat, though. For what? He was shit. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel here. Look back at Moreno's time at Liverpool, he was awful. And, you know, looking back at him with a fond heart is nice. And it's great that you guys have fond memories of him or have a nice recollection of him. But I just remember shouting at the television every time he was caught out of position and played terrible. And I remember the Europa League final that he was particularly terrible in. So I don't think he was a scapegoat as much as I think he was horrible. As in terrible. Rashica, so the guy from Werder Bremen, again, links doing the rounds today. I think Connor posted it up on the Anfield Agenda Instagram that Rashica could be available because of relegation for about 15 million this summer. A name that was linked to Liverpool a couple of seasons back, but again, I haven't followed Rashica at Werder Bremen. I don't know how good he has or hasn't been. Yeah. What else? Moreno was vibes. Well, he wasn't vibes every week when I went on Twitter and pretty much Liverpool fans in unison were saying how shit he was. I mean, if you guys want to go back and reinvent history, that's completely up to you. But just because he was sitting there licking Liverpool fans' arses after United lost the Europa League doesn't change my opinion of him. But that's just me. You're all entitled to your opinion as well. What have we got? Will Trent stay at Liverpool for the rest of his career? I hope so. Minamino, I don't know what's going on with Minamino, to be honest with you, Kieran. It's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Because you look at it from one side, it was only 7 million quid. But on the other side, he hasn't really tore it up at Southampton either. So I would suggest a potential move to Spain. Or maybe a move to link up with Jesse Marsch at Leipzig when he takes over from Salzburg might be on the cards. I don't know. Thoughts on Mbappe? Look, we all want Mbappe. There's no making any bones about it. We want Mbappe, but the odds of him coming, I would say, are quite slim. Harvey Elliott, yeah, that's going to be a tough decision for Jurgen Klopp, isn't it? Because I think we'll all agree that Harvey Elliott's a great talent. And I suppose it's going to be up to the manager whether he thinks that he can find a way to balance Harvey Elliott, balance his development with getting him enough game time, or if he goes out on loan. Now, you know, weirdly, I think that maybe qualifying for the Champions League could go against the Harvey Elliott staying at the club next season. Because if we were in the Europa League, I could absolutely see a way of giving the guy much more game time. But I hope he sticks around because I love the idea of him. And he was really good at Blackburn, very good at Fulham, and loves Liverpool Football Club. So, yeah, I'd absolutely love Elliott to stay at the club next season and get some game time. Daka to Liverpool, again, I've said it over and over again. Everything that I've read suggests that Jesse Marsch is going to try and take him to Leipzig with him when he leaves Salzburg. And it's a path that's been trodden many times before by players that went from Salzburg to Leipzig and around other Red Bull clubs as well. Taki looked like a superstar in the Bundesliga. Yes, in the Austrian Bundesliga, Dave, he did. He looked really good. And, you know, funnily enough, when we played Salzburg, the Liverpool players were talking about Minamino on the training ground. And, you know, little did they know that Klopp and Michael Edwards had already, one, found out that he had a release clause of 7.25 million, and two, were going about triggering that release clause. Sven Botman, no, it's not going to come to Liverpool, mate. We're going to sign Canade. That's going to be the centre-back signing. If we move on a few more centre-backs, that might be revisited. But from what I've read right now, the Canada deals is all but done. Camavinga, I've seen links to Paris Saint-Germain actually, which makes some sense to me around Camavinga. Somebody who was 1 year left on his deal, somebody who's 18 years of age, being spoken about as a huge talent in France, and rightly so. So I would suggest maybe PSG. Ben Davies, does he exist really? I don't know. Davies seems to think he's going to be at Liverpool next year, so let's wait and see what happens there. Anything else on Khalid Carr? No, it's gone quiet. It's no secret that he was sitting on a runway on a private jet waiting for the go ahead to fly to Liverpool, but then we went in and we signed Kabak with an option to buy, which it doesn't look like we're going to take up, and Khalid Carr remained at Marseille. Whether we revisit or not, I don't think at this point with Canada we will, but that's all I have on him. Thoughts on Kabak? I'd trigger the 18 million personally. I really would. I think send him to the Euros, keep him for another season, see how he gets on. Worst case scenario, make a small profit on him next year. I mean, it might sound a bit hard-nosed, but I'd rather we have extra cover than not enough cover. I think I certainly learned a lesson this year when I said that I would understand not replacing Dejan Lovren if it meant that we got Jota and that we got Thiago, because that's come back to bite us in the backside, hasn't it? I mean, with the amount of injuries we had at centre back, I hope that we've learned our lesson there. Is it 100% no on Kabak? All signs seem to suggest it's a no from some very well placed people that have, not committed to it, but have kind of intimated towards it. Giroud will be a good plan B. It's not a Liverpool. Look, I get where you're coming from, and it makes sense because Giroud knows where the goal is. He's good in the air, and pulls out some important goals. But again, it's just a name that I think someone's plucking out of the air because I've not seen any genuine interest in it. Thoughts on Jonathan David? Don't think he's good enough. Brooklyn. Watched a little bit to Lille this year. Not for me. I think there's much better options out there in the market. Musialowski, I don't know what the question is. Daniel, he's obviously a young Polish player at Liverpool. Recently just lost the under-18 FA Cup final as part of that Liverpool team that lost to Aston Villa. Highly thought of. Possibly a loan move awaits from, I don't know. You're a Liverpool player of the season. Salah and Fabinho in that order. Do Liverpool have interest in Kane? Not that I'm aware of. Both Manchester clubs, I think. And I think the odds are he'll end up at City. If I was putting money on it, I'd put it down that he'll end up at Manchester City. Thoughts on Christian Pulisic? I'm still raging we didn't sign him. Hussein, I think I was very vocal about it at the time when he was leaving Dortmund to go to Chelsea, that I thought that we were making a mistake by not signing him. I was laughed at by a lot of Liverpool fans who said he was overhyped and nowhere near good enough. I think he's a talented footballer who I would have happily had and would still have in a heartbeat. So, yeah. Ikone is a great option. Is he, Nick? Let's be honest, Nick. I don't know, mate. You could have watched every minute of Lille this season. I don't know. I'm assuming, though, a lot of people are just basing off the fact that Lille won the French league. Again, I haven't seen much of him, but there is a link there today, but I don't want it to happen. I think we can get better players. I think all this is going to be a bit more clear-cut over the coming days and weeks when we start to know what Liverpool are working with and we start to know the calibre of player that we're after. Because we know Canada, that's going to happen. And that was an easy link to make because we knew the release clause, we knew we'd 1 year left, and we knew we needed a centre-back. But after that, it kind of just becomes a bit of a guessing game. And there's going to be a load of people throwing a lot of names at you and saying that they heard X, Y, and Z. And all I'll say is that 99% of the stuff that you read on social media is complete and utter horseshit from people who are just there trying to further their accounts to get clicks and views. Now, just stick to the all-reliables. Stick to the Fabrizio Romanos. Stick to the Melissa Reddy's. They might be the sexy ones at time because they're only confirming what we already know, but the devil is always in the detail. And these top-tier journalists might not break the story, but they'll always give you more information on the story. That's what I would say. No effing way we'll sell Salah to Chelsea. I'll tell you what there, mate. Rather than having a little go at me, direct your ire towards Christian Falk of Bill. Wasn't me that came up with it. He was on the United stand, said it a couple of times. The Chelsea were interested in Mohamed Salah. I, like you, think it's absolute poo-poo of the highest order, but, you know, no good having a pop at me, fella. It's not my story. What else is there? Which goalie would I sign? I'm probably just going to go back to the name that we've all heard 1,000 times, mate. Erdogan Kikir. I like that link. I like that price point, and I think he could provide competition to Alisson. Now, I'm not saying he'll ever best Alisson, because Alisson's amazing, but he's a good backup, and I would be more than happy if we went and signed him from what I've seen of him. Right, what's going on with the Super League stuff? Yes, thank you for reminding me, Abdullah. I did say I had a little bit on the Super League. Right, so, a couple of things are after coming out over the last few days. There's been a bit of an accusation from Tabas, the guy that runs La Liga, towards Johnny Infantino to suggest maybe that he met with the Super League clubs and that perhaps FIFA had sort of given a blessing for that move. Which he has denied. He hasn't denied meeting with them, but he has denied that FIFA were sanctioning it. And there's also the news that Real Madrid, Barcelona and Juventus face possible expulsion from the Champions League for 2 years over their role in the Super League because they refuse to back away from it. But the story gets a little bit more interesting because we all heard about the Swiss model and we all heard about the reformed Champions League format that will see clubs play 10 games instead of 6. Well, it looks like that isn't set in stone yet. Yes, it had been approved at the last meeting, but it looks like there could be a little twist yet in this tale because clubs are trying to fight for only 8 games. And a lot of clubs now, after what happened with the Super League, because let's not forget, this new Champions League was originally agreed to kind of keep the clubs that were trying to push away from the Champions League towards the Super League happy. So there's a lot of stuff about legacy placements, coefficient rankings, and a few other bits and pieces that kind of protected the top tier clubs if they miss out via the league and gave them a backdoor entry route into the Champions League. It seems like now, after all this has happened, that a lot of clubs, and I think rightly so, want to revisit that agreement and want to revisit what was agreed there because it doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, and I agree with it. If you want to make the Champions League 10 games and you want to increase it to 36 teams, I think there are much better ways of going about it than this contrived Swiss model of nonsense that confuses everybody and nobody knows what's what. So keep an eye out for that over the coming weeks because we may see another shake-up to the Champions League, and it may not be this 10-game Swiss model that we speak of before. So keep an eye out on that one. What else have we got? What do I think of Koulibaly? I think he's not coming to Liverpool, and that's it pretty much. Thoughts on Rafinha? Very good player, and you know, no problem. If Rafinha comes in, if Neto comes in, if they come in on top of what we already have at the club, great. But I'd still prefer Sancho, and I think you would as well. Thoughts on Bobby Firmino? He's my favourite player, Daniel, and I was happy to criticise him at some points this season because he wasn't living up to his own standards, but I do think that we started to see the best of him again as the season went on. Yeah, I think that he started to show a bit more flair. Now he's always gonna be somebody who infuriates us at times because of a slack sideways pass or something that he tries fancy that doesn't come off. But you know, I seen Bobby back. I seen glimpses of him linking up play really well and playing with more confidence. And I thought maybe his legs were going a bit, but you know, I hope I'm wrong. I want Bobby to be at the club. Is there any chance Werner will come to Liverpool? No, he'll stay at Chelsea, and I think he'll prove to be a hit at Chelsea. I think he's been very unlucky this season in some of the situations he's found himself in. Would I keep or sell Arioni? Gone. Bye, Daniel. He's I've not heard anything to suggest that he'll be at Liverpool. Did Liverpool sign a guy called Canade? No, we haven't signed him yet, mate, but the medical has taken place. It's been agreed, a 5-year contract, wages of around 70 grand a week apparently for Canade, and the only thing that really remains to be done is Liverpool to trigger that release clause and pay it to either Leipzig or the German Bundesliga. I don't know which one you have to pay it to. Who do you think will be our marquee signing? I suppose for him, we're all working on the assumption that there will be a marquee signing. I don't know if there will or won't be. I would suggest, if you're throwing the marquee around, the most likely one would probably be Sancho. But I'm not saying that signing's likely. I'm saying of all the marquee names, that's probably the most likely. Brad, how are you, mate? Said, evening, bud. Hope you and the family are well. I'd love a João Felix, slightly unproven, but he plays in the defensive team. I think he'd be awesome for us. There was a bit of talk at Atletico Madrid, mate, that maybe João Felix may be sacrificed at the end of the season to free up some funds and stuff. But I think, as things stand, he's going to stay at Atletico Madrid. And I agree. I think he could be best used in another team, but he is an Atletico Madrid player, and you know the ball's in their court on that one. But what they paid for him was a huge amount of money at the time. What do I think about Erling Haaland? Top notch, quality player, unbelievable talent. Again, like I've said before, if I was representing him, I'd tell him to stay at Dortmund for one more year, and then you can have your pick of any club you want next year, because you know you've got that €75 million clause built into your contract that kicks in 2022. I think that's about everything tonight, and if I have missed anything, ladies and gents, I'll be back tomorrow night at 8:30 to go through it. Also, don't forget to keep an eye out on TikTok, because I now do a little segment that I call Transfers in a Minute on the Anfield Agenda TikTok account. I put that up most days, so check that one out as well, and don't forget to keep an eye on our Instagram as well. But most importantly, make sure you have your notifications turned on, because tomorrow evening our 100k giveaway video is going to drop, and it's going to be linked in with an Anfield Agenda best bits of the season as well. So keep an eye out for that video tomorrow evening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. All the details of how you can win the prizes will be in that video on the 100k giveaway, and it will be running right the way through till June 1st, when I'll announce the winner of that package of prizes on a live stream on June 1st. So look, as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. I hope you're all having a cracking week. Lots of love to all of you. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video, and I will talk to you wonderful people.